I'm Linda Hirsch, and this is EdCast, a program created and produced by educators for everyone interested in education. There are over 2 million people incarcerated in the United States today. Ultimately, many will leave the prison system for re-entry into society, a process permeated by failure. How can we promote their successful reintegration into the community? What roles can universities and colleges play in facilitating the transition to life outside a prison wall? My guest today is Dreisinger, a CUNY professor who provides higher education opportunities for those in prison so that they may ultimately pursue a college degree on their release. She joins me today to discuss the Prison-to-College Pipeline, a program designed to transform the lives of the incarcerated through the power of education. We'll also speak with faculty working in the program and a former prisoner about to graduate college. All this coming up on EdCast. Joining me today is Dr. Dreisinger, professor of English at John Jay College and founder and academic director of the college's Prison-to-College Pipeline program. A journalist, cultural critic, and prison rights activist, she is also the author of the recently published book, Incarceration Nations, A Journey to Justice in Prisons Around the World. Thank you for joining us today on EdCast.
Good to be here.
I'd like to contextualize our conversation about the Prison-to-College Pipeline by discussing a bit about what you have found out about prisons in the United States. How many people are currently incarcerated?
America has the world's largest prison population. We have about 2.3 million people incarcerated in this country. Yeah.
And how does this compare globally? You said we have the largest?
Yes, we are the world's largest jailer. We have 5% of the world's population, but 25% of the world's prison population.
It's quite a figure.
Yep.
How long are the sentences that people are serving?
The U.S. is inimitable in handing out extraordinarily long sentences, and we're one of only 9 nations to punish via life sentences and the death penalty.
Wow. So, how does a prison-to-college pipeline fit into all of this?
So it's what I like to think is a small but powerful dent in the harm that mass incarceration causes. What we do is we're really all about increasing access to higher and generating interest in higher education among those in prison and coming home from prison. So we have a range of initiatives, but at the core of it is a in-prison college program, which is the Prison-to-College Pipeline.
Okay, so tell me a little bit about that program. Which campuses are involved? What does that look like?
So I am at John Jay, and this is currently a partnership between John Jay College of Criminal Justice and Hostos Community College, which is our partner institution. And we offer college courses and reentry planning at Otisville Correctional Facility to men who are within 5 years of release. So the idea is that they start college on the inside and then they're funneled directly into CUNY when they come home.
So one of the criteria is that they must be within 5 years of release. Are there any other eligibility criteria?
We run an admissions process. The students they must have passed the reading and writing CUNY assessment test. They go through a rigorous admissions process after that, writing an essay. I do interviews around the state. We actually recruit from 4 different prisons, and those accepted are transferred to Otisville. We administer CUNY testing all over the state, and also do some developmental ed work with those who don't pass the test or want to prepare for the test as well.
One of the aspects of the program that I was reading about is that you take some of your students from John Jay to go to the prison and to study and take classes with the prisoners. Why is this a part of the program?
So it's enormously beneficial to both sets of students. On the one hand, for the incarcerated students, it's an opportunity to be in as close to a normal college classroom as possible, and to be among their peers and be inspired by their peers, and likewise inspire their peers, and have that college experience. It also is a network building thing because they see the students when they come home, which is wonderful. And for the non-incarcerated students from the outside, it revolutionizes the way that they think about the criminal justice system. They are, even though many of them enter sort of, or most enter, knowing intellectually that the people in there are quote unquote just like them, but the experience of actually sitting down with them, the experience of learning with them, really hammers that home in a visceral way. And so they come out never thinking about prisons the same again.
Maybe we all need some more exposure to
Absolutely.
people in prison. I read a quote somewhere for faculty and the students who work with the prisoners in the program, talked about how erudite they were. And there seemed to be a real element of surprise about that. Should we be so surprised that there are prisoners in our system who are quite erudite?
Absolutely not. I mean, there are some of the
How do they get so smart?
Well, I mean, you know, the U.S. has a long history of incarcerating its brightest, its best and brightest, and frankly, it's people who are in prison due to a variety of circumstances, none of which has to do with lack of intelligence whatsoever. So they are often surprised, and they're energized by the learning environment. It's an opportunity for them to be learning with students who are as passionate as they are about learning.
And students who don't take it for granted, I'm sure, for 1 minute. Let's go back to what the students are learning, the curriculum. How did you decide on the curriculum? And what is the curriculum?
So the curriculum, we really try to mimic a freshman year curriculum and cover sort of gen ed requirements and cover a range of disciplines that gives the students a taste of what the different disciplines are, from anthropology, sociology, criminal justice. English is fundamental because it's a prerequisite for so many classes. So the idea is to give them a sense of these disciplines so they might think about moving towards a major, and also get their gen ed requirements out of the way so that by the time they come home, by the time they're enrolling in CUNY on the outside, they can pursue a major and take it from there.
I think I may have seen this on the profile on PBS when they did a segment on this program. They were talking about the literature, that, you know, these are students who are studying literature, and that also you have a huge emphasis on writing and grammar. So I want to talk about those two things for a moment. Why literature?
So,
which, by the way, as you know, in the outside world is being relegated to the backseat. I mean, you're an English professor, so am I, but you know, we've definitely seen the marginalization of the humanities and the liberal arts. So why literature here?
Well, as an English professor myself, I definitely believe in the power of narrative to help understand the world. And it's a very powerful tool for talking about issues that are larger than the story. And so I push the use of literature and narrative and reading intensive courses, partly because our students are so hungry for them. They're avid readers, avid learners, and they want a hefty curriculum in that way. And for writing, I mean, writing is incredibly profound in helping people communicate better, understand themselves, communicate with others, whether that's employers, family members. I mean, one of the really moving things that I've heard from students coming home is they'll say to me, I teach English 101 every fall semester to the new incoming students in the program, and they'll say that through that class and then through the part 2 of that class, which they take in the spring, they've become better able to deal with the world by way of communication, that they've learned to kind of process their thoughts, know how to express them, and know how to communicate their own narrative in powerful ways, which is so critical to the reentry process. And I'm really proud of that.
Were there any literary works that you felt had a really keen impact?
I teach The Color of Water by James McBride a lot. I teach it on the outside a lot too. It's a really, aside from just being a stunningly beautiful memoir, a really powerful story, I feel like it's something that a lot of students relate to and helps complicate their ideas about race and identity.
I'm familiar with the book. Can we just take a step back and tell us that this is a book about a young man who grows up in a large black family, doesn't really know that his mother is black. I mean, what is it about this book that you feel really resonates?
Yeah, so The Color of Water is is in many ways the book of New York City. It's about someone growing up, a young boy growing up and processing his own identity and his mother's identity in these neighborhoods in New York City and Red Hook and Brooklyn. And so I think the neighborhood piece is very familiar to students, to native New Yorkers, and the way that the book addresses race and the complexities of race and identity and doesn't try to put a neat, easy ending on those issues and is very useful for getting students to unseat their assumptions about race and identity more generally.
Why do you think education is so important to the reentry process?
Education is the way to pursue success and achievement as opposed to getting by. And that's really what we're pushing for. We think, I mean, the right to education is something that everyone deserves. And that's why we always frame this issue as an educational access issue. And so by coming home from prison and going to college, it's a statement of, I'm not just coming home. Obviously, I'm not going back on whatever path led me to prison, but even more than that, I'm pursuing something higher. I'm pursuing the opportunities that I should have been afforded in the first place that often weren't provided to me by the neighborhoods, by the communities that I grew up in. So it's really about getting people the opportunities they should have had in the first place.
Jim Carney had the opportunity to go to Hostos Community College and speak with some faculty who were involved in the program, as well as to a graduate of the program. So let's take a look.
Hostos Community College plays an important role in the prison-to-college pipeline. Elise Vasquez-Iscan is an assistant professor and teaches in the program.
I became involved because I had originally worked at Rikers Island in the area of health education. And I felt that there was a lot of work that needed to be done in the area of education and the correctional environment.
What are some of the challenges that some of these students face coming into the education system right out of incarceration?
Well, you know, the Prison-to-College Pipeline program really does a great job in preparing them to be proficient as a student. They learn to be a student while incarcerated. They learn the skills, time management. They learn writing, critical thinking skills.
When those who are incarcerated come out, they do not have access to math, developmental, or anything that's related with computers because they're not allowed to have computers. They're taking the math exams, the CUNY math exams, placement exams, using computers. Well, they're not allowed to use them, so that's the reason that Hostos and John Jay formed, a partnership.
They're coming from backgrounds that they have been disenfranchised, disinvested, and disengaged from the educational system at a very early age. Yet they're excelling academically. And so when they are released, they have these skill sets and they have this confidence that allows them to continue in their educational course.
The first time I did this was my first time in Otisville. Prison is not like what you see in the movies. I learned that very quickly. I was surprised that to me it didn't look as ominous as it does in the movies, but you still know you're in prison. And the gentlemen were really very receptive, extremely receptive. Well, it's a captive audience, you don't have any distractions.
Is there a particular example of someone who's excelled in the program that you can tell us about?
I have currently a student that's enrolled in the health education program. He has participated in various activities to bring awareness on the issue of incarceration, mass incarceration, but he's taken it even further to advocate for the mass incarceration of children. In New York State, you can put children in correctional facilities as early as 7 years old. So he's really taking it to himself to be a champion and advocate for changes in policy.
When I first heard about the John Jay program, it was basically on a flyer, right? And so the flyer that I seen, it was just like, well, okay, here goes another flyer of a regurgitated program, right? So, I'm the type of person that you got to throw your name in the hat, right? So I threw my name in the hat, but immediately I recognized that this program was a little different than the ones that it wasn't actually a regurgitated program because the people that came in were committed. The people that, whether they were volunteers, supporters, or whoever they may be, they came with a certain energy that let me know that this was a little different. And once I was enrolled into this program, the quality of my own work changed because I had plateaued academically. And when I got involved with this program, I learned how to give things a closer read, or it made learning more fun because I felt myself getting smarter.
And where do you go from here? What do you plan on doing with this education that you've got through the program?
I just wanted to leave a legacy behind, right? So, you know, a lot of people chase the money. I'm chasing a dream, you know, so really, like, I'm really trying to chase a dream. And I know that in the end result, I'm going to benefit from some of the work that I'm doing now. And so, where I see myself going to film school after I graduate, Hostos. I would like to go to film school and compare all of my skills, which would be, you know, my community health major, my justice and scholar education I got from Columbia, where I graduated in the humanities department, and my film credentials. I would like to put that all together and do some important work.
It means to me that education really is a transformative and powerful tool to engage individuals that have been disenfranchised, that have been marginalized, and that people do have deserve a second chance. I mean, this country is based on the credo that America is the opportunity, the land of opportunity and the land of second chances. And therefore, you know, who best to benefit from that but people that have done the time, served their sentence, and now are back in society.
None of this of what I've accomplished is much, but I work for something other than what I was doing before, and I feel accomplished and I feel great, and I just want to be an inspiration to people that may need some inspiration from somewhere.
For EdCast, I'm Jim Carney. Now back to Linda in the studio.
What was your take on what we just saw from the faculty and former prisoner perspective?
Every time I hear my students speak, it warms my heart in profound ways and inspires me. I mean, those are two superb faculty members who are testament to the quality of what we bring inside to teach. One of them is currently teaching, and the other is an advisor to our students at Hostos. And I think, I mean, Lumumba speaks for himself. He's an intellect, he's incredibly passionate, he's lived through some unbelievable things, and you would never be able to tell just sitting with him in a classroom. He's such a gift.
In the recent past, Governor Cuomo proposed providing money for education programs for prisoners, and he met with a tremendous amount of resistance so that he even had to backtrack. Why do you think that idea met with such resistance?
Because we live in such a punitive culture, and we inculcate a feeling of revenge in the masses. We do, and so we should expect it when people are up in arms at the very thought of anything that's beneficial, even when that same thing is beneficial to them, as we know that education benefits everyone. It creates safer communities, and yet there's still such an attachment to revenge.
Why do you think then prisoners need the Pell money, and why do they deserve it? I know people felt they don't deserve it. They're prisoners. Why do you say they do deserve it?
They deserve it because they were the very same people who were often denied educational access to begin with. So this is an opportunity to right that wrong. I mean, we talk about people deserve second chances, but really in many respects it's about first chances, because so many of the people incarcerated are coming from communities where they did not have opportunity, they did not have quality educational programming, and so this is about giving them what they should have gotten in the first place.
I know another, part of the impetus of this program was the acknowledgement that it is very hard for prisoners to leave prison and successfully re-enter society, that the rate of recidivism is high. What are some of the challenges that prisoners face when they come home that we don't think about?
The challenges are enormous. In fact, I hate the term prisoner reentry because it makes it sound so simple, you know, but you are not allowed, there are severe limitations on your access to public housing and other forms of social services. You are discriminated against by employers. You're discriminated against by schools who have boxes on the application that causes application attrition, and people lose the motivation. So it's difficult to find housing. It's difficult to find jobs. You have to reacclimate to family members you haven't seen in sometimes a very long time and had a rift with to begin with, and now an even more deepened rift. So the challenges are inordinate.
Are prisoners familiar with the internet and cell phones and that kind of technology? Is that something
No.
they have to learn?
You have to learn all of that. You have to learn computers in order to type your papers up. You have to learn how to exist in a world that's staring at screens all the time. The daily challenges are quite deep.
How costly is this program?
It's not tremendously costly. I mean, it's the price of tuition, it's the price of administration. I mean, there's a lot of bureaucracy involved in running something like this, so you need to have that covered. And it's the cost of transportation is where the bulk of but the cost beyond tuition money is simply that.
Have you done any research to date that looks at the effectiveness of the program? And if you have, what have you found out?
Well, the Prisoner Reentry Institute, which is our home at John Jay College, has done recently, in the past couple of years, did a research on the barriers to higher education for formerly incarcerated people more generally, and it was actually called The Gifts That They Bring. So in many respects it was really a study on the value of a program like this, of promoting higher education to both those in prison but also those coming home, and the gifts that they bring to campus. And I mean, I think it's a long and complicated thing, but success is a difficult thing to measure because it's how do we define that? Is it about recidivism rates? That's sort of setting the bar quite low, and that's the lowest common denominator.
What are you looking for? What's the bar that you want to set?
The bar that I set is I want to see our students achieve great levels of success and personal satisfaction and have careers and not jobs, and feel that they have finally kind of achieved what they wanted to achieve in their lives.
I know we don't have much time left, but I do want to touch upon some of the research in your book, Incarceration Nations, in which you look at prison systems, and not only in the U.S. but around the world. Are there other paradigms besides the prison system that we could be looking at?
Yeah, so that's
what are they?
I'm deeply invested in restorative justice, which is a restorative and reparative model as opposed to a revenge-based punishment model. And so I'm interested in ways that the system can be shifted so that it's much more about repairing the harm to victims and creating systems of reparation and reconciliation, as opposed to how do we punish the offender and then stigmatize that person for the rest of his or her life.
Are there any models in the world that you saw that you say we could learn from this, or we should implement that here?
Well, I saw some powerful restorative justice programs nationally and also interpersonally in both Rwanda and South Africa. And of course, I end the book in Norway, which is a notoriously just society in many respects. And certainly its prison system has some quite innovative and quite rich approaches.
What makes it innovative, if I'm just briefly?
Well, the Scandinavian countries are famous for what's called open prisons, which are the people incarcerated in them can come and go and spend weekends at home, do home leave, work jobs, and in essence, the idea is that they remain connected to the community even though they are incarcerated.
I have a quote, I think you said it, it was that justice is the most complex word in the dictionary. Why?
Justice is constantly in motion. It's something that you never achieve. There are no utopias. I having spent several years visiting prisons around the world and learning about societies around the world, I learned that there are no utopias, there are no simple answers. And so it's a constant quest, it's a constant in motion activity that we have to engage in.
And what do you see as the next step for the Prison-to-College Pipeline program?
Well, hopefully we will be a recipient of the Obama Second Chance Pell Grant, and that will allow us to expand into the hundreds and, and basically be able to offer education to more and more individuals and keep planting that seed of higher education.
Would you be expanding within the CUNY system, do you mean, or within the prison system? Tell me.
Both. We'd want to expand. Certainly, when I envisioned this program years ago, I envisioned it as a CUNY-wide initiative, so that would be certainly very exciting. And there's so much interest in other campuses in CUNY in being involved, but the idea would be to increase the number of students. So that would mean reaching out to more prisons and recruiting more students.
Well, I want to thank you so much for joining us today. We are out of time. Professor Boz Dreisinger, John Jay College, thank you so much for coming here today.
Thanks for having me.
Don't go away. We'll be right back with our Ed Bites. Welcome back to this edition of Ed Bites. Sesame Street is beginning to look a lot like Silicon Alley. According to Dive, Sesame Workshop will partner with IBM Watson to develop educational technology that includes personalized learning features in apps and interactive toys. This will allow the gathering and analysis of data about what pre-K students are learning and how. TechCrunch also reports that context exploration may be another focus. This enables educators to learn when a child has mastered a subject or needs help. Maybe it really is never too early to start learning. The latest results of the National Assessment of Education Progress reveal that only 40% of our student population is prepared for college or career. Reading scores on the 2015 Nations Report Card were steady for 4th graders, but scores for 8th graders declined and 12th grade scores remained flat. Only 37% of high school seniors performed at or above the proficient level in reading. Critics of the test point out that there is more to college readiness in reading and math scores, and the exams don't measure these other qualities. With STEM fields promising more career options, there is a push to encourage girls to code. The nonprofit group Girls Who Code is presenting a weekly YouTube series from the perspective of 4 women who code. They answer questions on everything from learning to code to the challenges they faced. They also provide advice to teen girls who are interested in coding. Some conservatives have been accusing college faculty of left-leaning tendencies for years. They may be right. No pun intended. Inside Higher Ed reports on a new study that finds that those with graduate education not only lean more to the left than do other Americans, but they have done so increasingly in the last 2 decades. A greater level of education is linked to more liberal views on government, social issues, the environment, and other topics. That's it for this edition of EdCast. Till next time, class dismissed.